Hello and welcome to Of the People. I'm Robert Chernin. Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to take you back to April 2008. Then Senator Barack Obama famously said that he wasn't surprised about the country folk getting frustrated because they quote unquote cling to their guns and religion, right? I bring that up as a backdrop to this whole controversy with Jason Aldean and try that in a small town and those lyrics in all of this. It has to be seen in that light because really what's going on is another war aspect of the war on religion. Now, first of all, if you look at the lyrics and you live in a small town, he's correct, right? There was a time, however, in that we did take care of our neighbors, that neighborhood and community transcended what ethnicity you were, what religion you were, where you came from. You were part of the fabric of the community, and we all took care of each other, right? But to say that this is pro-gun and pro-violence harkens back to me to the Obama comment, which I think was a very legitimate comment, which was the way they see the country or working class or flyover country is they are stupid. We're stupid, and we cling to our guns and our religion. And this is really the same trope or the same argument that they're making. So you have Sheryl Crow and all these other people saying that he's promoting violence. He's not promoting violence. This is another version of the Democrats basically saying if they don't like something, they want to cancel it. Now, to America's credit, from what I can see, the song is number one, number two on the Billboard parade. It's gone up 1,000%. Good for America. But I want to give a quick, different perspective, right? Not only is this anti-religion and another aspect of that, and by the way, as an aside, if you remember back then, I was around, then candidate Hillary Clinton accused Barack Obama of being an elitist for that comment. So said the basket of deplorables, Mrs. Clinton, who I just find that to be so hypocritical. But the larger conversation here has to be about right and wrong. And that's the conversation that the left doesn't want us to have, right? Black Lives Matter violence during the 2020 elections was okay, but lyrics are not. Where's the violence, right? Teaching gender fluidity and gender transition and grooming is okay, but it's not okay if I protest that my daughter doesn't want to change in the locker room or bathroom with someone who is a male but identifies as a woman. That's not okay. Slavery today, when we're talking about human trafficking, we're talking about child pornography, is not okay, is okay today. But slavery 300 years ago not only is not okay, it's the original sin and it colors everything, and we're all racist now. That's what we're being taught. So the real question is there right and is there wrong? And that's why this is against religion, because religion provides that foundation. And I don't care what denomination you are. I don't care if you're Christian. I don't care if you're Jewish. I don't care if you're a Muslim. List all the religions. It doesn't matter to me. I am not supporting one religion over another. The other reason this is anti-religious is they don't want the ultimate question asked. Does evil exist? Because the first thing is, does right and wrong exist? Or is everything relative, right? Is one man's terrorist another man's freedom fighter? So everything is relative and there is no right or wrong. That's what the argument is that's being put out. And because it really doesn't hold water, because there is right and wrong, that's what they don't want you to see. That's what they don't want you to talk about. Now, I do subscribe to Justice Potter Stewart. When asked about defining pornography, he said, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. Right and wrong is the same thing. The real question is there evil? Because if there's right and wrong, then there has to be evil in the world, and which there is. By the way, to the Democrats, the conservatives are evil. I mean, I understand how you all see us. I get that, right? But child mutilation, how is that not evil? Child sex trafficking, how is that not evil? And there are plenty other examples that I can give you, and I can go on a further rant. But understand that this whole controversy with Jason Aldean really is viewed in that context that maybe didn't start with Obama, but that's where the fabric started being ripped apart. So keep buying those songs. And he's right. Try all that crap in a small town and see how far that gets you. We'll give you a really good welcome. No problem. Stay tuned for the main show, folks. We'll be right back. Hello, and welcome back to Of the People. I'm Robert Chernin with my lovely co-host,
Ericka Redic.
Yes, you are. Hi, Eric.
Hi. Hello.
Let's jump right in, shall we?
Yes, I am ready.
Okay.
I'm ready to jump in.
So,
Speaking of jumping
so
in.
am I. Speaking, you know what? I want to end where we ended the last show. That interview on human trafficking and child sex trafficking with Jaco Boyens is one of the most moving interviews we've ever done. Folks, if you haven't seen it, we're up on Rumble, we're up on Facebook, we're up on Twitter, we're on YouTube.
All the socials.
But all the socials. What I really want to draw attention to, though, because people think about immigration, illegal immigration, immigration policy, all of those things, all of which are important, but under the radar is this whole sort of human trafficking, child sex trafficking issue, which for some reason, I mean, it should be bipartisan. It's
You'd
not.
think so. You think so?
Yeah, I would think a lot of things that are not, but this one's such a serious issue. I do want to focus on Texas Governor Abbott because within the last couple of weeks, he signed some major legislation protecting the border, and they established that floating barrier in, I think it's the Rio Grande River. Yep. And now the Biden administration is suing Texas.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. They want to sue over Operation Lone Star. So this is where basically Governor Abbott and the Texas legislature has said, you know what? If the federal government is not going to protect our borders, if you're not going to protect Texas and American sovereignty, then we're going to. And so, yeah, they're suing, trying to make them take this floating border barrier out of the Rio Grande.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, there's an article I'm reading. Biden administration sues Texas over floating border barriers used to repel migrants. So, again, it comes down to states' rights to protect their own borders versus the federal government, right? And the federal government is using the ability to regulate bodies of water and what you can do in a body of water as a means to circumvent the will of the people of Texas.
Well, and
am I getting that right?
Well, that's what, one of the criticisms that we've had, particularly Benjamin and I did a mini documentary last year. We went to Del Rio and highlighted the fact that the border barrier, which is basically just a chain link fence with a bunch of holes in it, is actually, 30 or 50 yards away from the Rio Grande River. So by the time you're already in America, by the time there's a border. And so the complaint is that this border barrier and the razor wire that they've put on the Rio Grande and that they're paying to folks who have land on the Rio Grande River, they're saying, oh, it's endangering migrants. Okay. So notice again, the conflation of illegal aliens, illegal immigrants with migrants, right? Well, here's the deal. If you want to say that we're worried about the protection of asylum seekers or migrants, then why aren't they going to the border crossing where they should be going rather than crossing the Rio Grande River? I mean, that just, so.
And by the way, let me add something to that. What most people don't know, right? The Border Patrol now has an online application.
Yeah.
Which, if you really want to come into the country legally, and frankly, most of the illegals are using that application anyway, where there's really no security checks.
That's correct.
Right. So Customs and Border, like CBP, Customs Border Patrol, right, has an application. Folks, don't believe me, as usual, look it up. So this is, again, a political agenda trying to circumvent a state because I think the Biden administration, what did he promise Spain and Mexico? 14 million immigrants or people would immigrate from Hispanic countries during his 4 years of administration.
Wow.
Right?
Oh yeah. Well, that's
you didn't catch it. Don't you remember that one?
That doesn't surprise me. When we're seeing 100,000 people a month crossing the border or having encounters with Border Patrol, and that's just who they're encountering. That's the number of people that they are picking up,
that they're catching, or that they're
exactly. Right. And so that's not even who's getting across the river illegally unobstructed.
So a friend of mine who is in Customs and Border Patrol, right? And I have lots of friends in high places, right? Which, I'm not important, but all of them are, said we functionally have no southern border right now, right? And the flow into the country is out of control. It's not just the people, right? They like to put this in terms of humanity, or they had a whole cage thing under the Obama administration and whatnot, right? But it's the drugs that are coming in. It's not just the people. It's the human trafficking. It's the drugs that are coming in. It's the cartels that the minute you say the word terrorist, people go, oh, there you go, you're a conspiracy theorist. But if you're letting people in without checking, and you don't know where they are when they're in here, right? And all you see is the stories in the news isolated here or there about this one who got in and this person or murdered this person. They were kicked out 12 times and they got back in. Sounds like it's got a system that's working for me. So look, kudos to the governor of Texas. Kudos to the state that are working with the governor, because there is an intrastate or interstate pact.
Yes.
Pact, right, that they're now put together. But so the Justice Department, however, filed a 9-page lawsuit in federal district court in Austin. Right. And the river buoys violate a longstanding federal law that governs structures in navigable waterways. So using a technicality to basically say, screw you to, the state of Texas or illegal immigration. So my attitude is, Governor Abbott, if you're listening, keep busing those migrants to the sanctuary cities, especially like Martha's Vineyard. That was a really priceless one.
Well, and one of the quotes Governor Abbott I've heard is, "See you in court, Mr. President," which I absolutely love. And I think really the most important one of the pieces of legislation that has passed the Texas legislature is defining the cartels as terrorist organizations. And, I'm always cautious about giving too much power to the police state or too much power to law enforcement because, I'm one of these, this is where my libertarian hackles kind of stand up and I go, ugh, I want to be careful.
Wait a minute.
But
wait a minute. In today's day, look, I can appreciate libertarian tendencies, right? My attitude is, I don't want the government telling me what to do. Leave me alone. Right? If the government leaves me alone, I'll leave them alone.
Right. But
in today's state, are you really lamenting and are you really concerned with too much power in law enforcement?
So this is what I'm saying. So these are things that tend to concern me. So I always want there to be an opportunity to reconsider these things later on. But I actually love that these cartels are being called and defined as terrorist organizations now. And that's one thing that the federal government has been unwilling to do. And when I have like you said, I have family in Border Patrol. And when I hear stories like And this, there has been a humanitarian crisis on our border for years. And they've just, that was,
Thank you, President Obama.
and their lies about the border are one of the biggest reasons this is why I'm wearing my I used to be a liberal shirt today, because I remember in the car listening to the news. I'm going to go off a little bit here. I was listening. Listening to the news say, "Oh, there's no crisis at the border. There's no crisis at the border." And I was like, "Oh my God, I literally just got told a story by my family where the cartels." So what, if you don't live in Texas or a border state, a lot of people don't realize it's traditionally a very porous border. Okay. So people do work, and I don't mean in a bad way. Like, there's border crossings, people come across to work, people go to school. It's very much a blended community in a lot of places along the Texas-Mexico border. And so when you hear about the cartel just coming across and mowing down hundreds of women and children and men just getting ready to cross the border to go to work and go to school and get stuff done, these are terrorists. And
wait a minute. Let me interrupt you. I have not heard of an incident where on the Mexican side of the border, where there were people getting ready to cross the border, that were mowed down or gunned down or murdered by the cartels. You're telling me that that's happened? I'm not telling you that you don't, that's not truthful, but if I haven't heard of it, I guarantee you 99% of America hasn't heard of it, and I have not heard that.
Exactly. And that was why when I'm listening to NPR lie to the American people and say Donald Trump is a racist and there's no crisis at the border, and I'm like, I just heard a story literally last week where hundreds of people were murdered by the drug cartels just because they do it as a way to try to control people and manipulate the government, manipulate the people into going along with things. There was story after story that's not covered by the mainstream media of, oh God, when was it? A couple of years ago, there was a cartel leader that got picked up by the police. Okay, so the police actually had the nerve to go, and they were able to pick up this cartel leader, and then the gang came around, freaking started murdering up the police and killing people and killing civilians, and then the civilians basically revolted against the police and made them give up the cartel leader. But you don't hear these stories. So the cartels are literally using terrorist tactics to control and manipulate the Mexican population to allow for this stuff to go on. And you never hear about it on the news.
Well, I certainly don't. And look, the cartels control Mexico. The Mexican government does not.
That's right.
I think anyone who's familiar with politics understands that. But I want to go back to something else you talked about, which was your concern about law enforcement having too much power. So there's a story in the news about the LA Police Department, and the superintendent basically told the police officers, because there's union negotiations and the LA council is hostile to the police and police enforcement, basically said to them, quote, go somewhere, in other words, leave LA, go somewhere that respects the work you do, right? So I'm not concerned about too much law enforcement at this point, because if I have to choose between like the Democrats and law enforcement, I go with law enforcement. And let's not forget something. Los Angeles, which I believe is the second largest police department in the country behind New York City, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe Chicago's bigger, but I don't think so.
No, it's LA.
Right? Okay. LA has lost since 2019 over 1,000 police officers who have either retired or left, right? So they're down 10%. This is against the backdrop of a spike in homelessness in LA, a spike in crime in LA. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, 30% of all homeless in this country are in California. So, Governor Newsom, I hope you're running for president because you should run based on your record in
Oh
California.
my
But
God.
as far as concern with law enforcement having too much power, the pendulum goes both ways. But right now, the police are not allowed to do their job. And their job, right? They're law enforcement. Their job is to enforce the laws, right? So, whether it's laws on the border, but you have the federal government who is intervening for political reasons against a governor, against state laws. You have law enforcement, um, and then you brought up the courts, right? So the government is now using the courts. And I find this to be incredulous to me because, on the one hand, you have the Biden administration and the liberals basically saying, don't trust the Supreme Court, overrule the Supreme Court, expand the court. But, right? I mean, am I missing something?
Yep. Nope. Nope.
Right.
Yep.
So they're saying expand the court, all that other stuff. So they're saying, it's incredible to me that what they're really doing. And yet they're using the courts as they see fit. Yet there's this whole concept now called popular constitutionalism. And basically, it's been around for a while, but there's a Harvard professor, so he must be right.
Oh, Harvard.
And his name is Mark Tushnet. Now, if this were a comedy show, I could really do a riff on the name, but, because, Jewish tush, all that stuff. But, he certainly seems like he's an ass based on what he's putting forward. But that's a different discussion. But basically, they're saying, right, because we're going back to the whole court thing, is they're basically saying that and they're calling it now a MAGA Supreme Court, right? So they're trying to wait a minute. So you're trying to delegitimize the courts by saying that because of their mistaken interpretation and we need to restore democracy. And their argument is that according to the Constitution, the courts do not have exclusive authority to interpret the Constitution.
What?
How do you like them out?
What?
That's the argument. Look up popular constitutionalism and look up, Mark Tushner.
Then who does?
Who's a Harvard professor. The Constitution is pretty clear. Folks, if you go to Article 3 of the Constitution, right, and I can read it for you, since I prepared for this, right? Article 3, Section 2, Clause 1 says the following. The judicial power shall extend to all cases, note the word all, in law and equity. So they already knew we were going to devolve into diversity, equity, and inclusion. The judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution. I mean, what part of that don't you understand, ladies and gentlemen?
They don't care. First of all, they don't care what the words say. They don't care what the words mean. Right. If they're not getting their way, it's whatever it is illegitimate, right? Like that is going to be, that is just like all of the candidates or all these people went from being anti-vaccine to pro-vaccine when it could benefit them and they could control people. So they're going to be pro-constitution and pro-law enforcement when they control it. Just like they demonize law enforcement and demonize police and say that they're all a bunch of racist, sexist, homophobes, every istophobe there is in the book, until you have January 6th happen. And then, our poor law enforcement, look at how mean people were to them. Like, dude, you do not care about these people.
Wait. Are you talking about the FBI plants in the January 6th crowd, or are you talking about the regular law enforcement?
All of it. They don't.
Sorry, I had to put that in
there. No, it's true though. That's the thing, is they don't care. They just lie and make stuff up so that they can lather up their base to go out and spread more hatred and division. It is.
All right.
There is no truth anymore.
I want to come back to that. We're getting the high sign that we need to go make some money and take a break. But this is sort of a harbinger to the 2024 election.
Yeah.
This is a harbinger to sort of what's really at stake there. But I think the war on the courts as an integral part of that is where we want to come back to. So, folks, we got to go make some money, being the true bourgeois capitalists that we are. Stay tuned. Eric and I will be right back.